I'm sure how I do that.
Actually, I'm gonna do the same thing.
Hey guys, it's Chris Chico and Gary Boomershine. Just if you guys can type into the chat. Looks like we have people in the room already. If you could type into the chat and let us know if you can hear us okay. There's a bit of a 10-second delay, so I'm going to wait for you guys to respond to that.
There you are, Chris. That's interesting. It's like a 20-second delay for me. I walked out of the room about 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, when I was watching it, when I had the computer on and some of the other ones, there was a bit of a delay. So just has it come on your side where you can hear or no?
Yeah. You sound like nice, Justin. Thank you. All right, Valerie's there and Debbie, Graham. Awesome. Hey everybody. Let's see we've got two computers up. That's a long delay, Chico. It's like we're about 20 seconds ahead.
We are.
20 seconds delayed.
We are. Yeah.
I'm just not going to look at the other computer.
Yeah, you haven't experienced that because that's what I was doing the other time when we had one, and then I kept on looking at, but then it's kind of delayed, so you almost have to ask a question and wait a little bit. So what do you want to do? It's 3:03. You want to wait like a few more minutes and then we'll get started?
Yeah, let's do that. All right, Steve, it all looks good. So
hey, Justin, I sound like, but you look like. Never mind. Go ahead.
Awesome. All right, let's give it another 15 seconds. And Chico, if we want to bring people, I haven't done this yet, but if we want to bring somebody onto a call live, you know how to do that?
No, I don't know how to do that.
All right.
That's a very good question. It says I can invite somebody as a speaker. There's like a little button here that says invite as a speaker.
Awesome. Hey, Justin, Chico, when he first came on, Chico's shirt was almost unbuttoned. I'm like, dude, what are you wearing, a robe? Button up that shirt. All right, you ready to get started?
Yeah. So go ahead, it's all yours. You can kick it off.
All right, good. You got the recording on?
It automatically starts recording.
All right, let's get started. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday REIVault weekly team huddle call. Today is Tuesday, October 20th, 2015. Welcome. This is going to be our new format for REIVault weekly calls. Allows us to record, and also we're going to change the format a little bit, where we're going to do some presentations, walk you through some of the tools that Chris and I use for our business. Next week, we are going to bring on Lou Brown to talk about owner financing. Lou Brown's an expert in buying subject to and buying other methods other than just cash. And so we have an opportunity. And before we end this call, I'm going to ask you if you have questions about buying owner financing, buying other methods other than with cash. I would like to have you guys send in questions, and I'll remind you at the end of this call. But email support@REIVault, actually dealhelp@REIVault.com, and any questions that you have. We're actually, Chris and I are going to be preparing with Lou, coming on next week to answer questions and talk about owner financing, and he's awesome. You guys will love him. We'll have him for at least 45 minutes, and we'll do that next week. So this is our new format. If you're on here, you definitely have the ability of asking questions. We've noticed in the older format, you had to press *5, and we just weren't getting enough questions, and some people are shy. So you can use the chat, and then we, at some point, we'll figure out how to bring somebody onto the call if you have a question or we want to have a dialogue on a topic. So ask questions anytime you'd like, and so let's go ahead and get started. Chris, today you are going to you're going to be teaching people about how possibly to eliminate the issues with the email clutter, and how using Gmail and some of the technology with Gmail, we're able to turn the email process into an incredible, powerful tool. And so you're going to walk through how you do it, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A. And then that'll probably maybe about 25 to 30 minutes. And then we'll just have our standard questions. If you have technical questions or you want to talk about a specific deal, then we'll do that. And we'll see how it goes. And we'll ask all of you for feedback. And if you like the format, this will be the new format going forward. So welcome to the call. Chico, you ready to get started here?
I am ready. I even changed my camera angle, but it doesn't seem to make. I always change my camera angle to see if I look better, but it never really does work in that way. So let me go ahead and get the slides here.
Hey, one little note. So I'm living in San Ramon, kind of outside of San Ramon, California, about an hour from San Francisco. We've had over 134 earthquakes in the last 7 days, and 40 today. So if for some reason I disappeared and I'm no longer on the call, Chris, you probably know that some sort of big earthquake hit. The luxury of living in California.
And I will continue to run the call no matter what. That's not going to prevent me from running the call in any way. Okay, so let me go ahead and open this. So Gary, as I share this, as I go through this presentation, if obviously stop me at any time. I'm going to just wait like 10 seconds just to make sure that, Gary, you can let me know if are you able to see my slides?
Yeah, looks good.
So let me put these in regular slide. Okay, so email relief, and that's kind of the name that I thought of, just simply because for a lot of people, I think that email is is not a relief, right? So it's a place where there's a lot of emails, there's a lot of stuff all jumbled in there, the good stuff with the important stuff with the not so important stuff, and most people, I think, revert to text messaging for the most part, just simply because email for them is not really a good means of communication, only because it's completely out of control. And so the intent here is to give you a framework that after all said and done, you can implement. And then now you're going to be in a position where if you check email, it should take you 10 to 15 minutes max. And at the end of the day, you should have your email inbox with only a very small number of emails left, and not thousands of emails or hundreds of emails, or whatever the case may be. As I see people with a lot of emails. So the email problem.
Hey, Chico, hold on real quick. I'm noticing, I'm looking at the other computer, and I'm not, the other computer, the live one as an attendee is not showing your slides. I'm seeing some goofy picture of me that's like 15 years ago popping up on the screen.
Okay, now. Okay, testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. Okay, you should be able to see it.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm seeing your slides, but on the attendee version, I'm not seeing the slides.
Okay. Let me know. I just switched it. I just did something that I think should work.
Okay.
Let me know.
Making sure that you have control. My screen. Yeah, no, your slides are still not showing.
Well, give it.
Actually, let's ask everyone, are you guys seeing a slide deck that says email relief? If you're seeing that, just whiteboard, it makes even more. Okay, there it goes. Awesome.
Okay, we're good.
Justin, you are, I love Justin's sense of humor.
Okay. So let's talk about the email problem and the solution, right? So the email is, if you're overloaded with emails, things are falling through the cracks. You're not able to use email effectively since it's really unusable for you. So you kind of revert to text or other means of communication, and you're stressed out because your email is out of control. The solution is that I'm going to share with you guys here today is through the use of Gmail. So some of you may have an AOL account, some of you may have a Yahoo account or various other accounts. This system is really designed to work around Gmail and really some of the powerful functionality that Gmail contains. We're going to go ahead and work through Gmail. We're going to prune and remove the non-essential things that are in your inbox. Claim your inbox and your attention, and start using the email the way it was intended to, as a means of communicating and getting things done versus maybe a point of suffering for some of you. So I'm going to get right into it. So the first concept is the fact that you should have two different email addresses. And the reason for that is you should have a primary address, and that address is one that you use for work email and or important communication and any sort of project management software. So for me, in my example, would be, for example, my wife, Gary, people on our team. We use Teamwork. Teamwork.com is a project management tool. So the emails go to that address because they're notifications that I want to know and I want to be able to be attentive to. Any sort of personal contacts, my friends, and so on. My other things such as my bank emails, fraud alerts, and those type of things that I'd want to know. I'd want to see them as they come in, just in case, just in case there's something of significance, or those are things that are in my constant stream of communication that I want to be able to have. The second email that you should have is a secondary email. And the secondary email is,
yeah. Your second slide is not showing again, just as a note.
Really?
So push forward.
My second slide?
Yeah, we're still seeing the main REIVault email relief slide, so it's not moving to the second slide.
Well, you gotta listen. You gotta. Are you listening to listen to the audio on that computer, and let me know if the audio is talking. You're saying it's not changing.
It did for a second. Go to the second slide.
Hold on. Let me.
I'm now seeing it. So there you go.
Okay, you know what it is? I just figured it out. It's if you go full screen mode, it doesn't. It craps out.
Okay.
That's what the issue is.
I just think it's easier for people to understand you go through this. So go ahead.
Okay. So we talked about the primary email, your principal email that that is the one that we're going to put most of our the important stuff through. And then we have a secondary email, right? So this secondary email is an email address that you're going to give to items that you still want to be able to see. However, those for the secondary email are items that you may not need to see right away. If it takes a couple of days for you to see that, it's okay. So what are some of those emails? Like, for example, I still subscribe to a variety of different email lists, right? Newsletter lists for maybe some real estate stuff, maybe some marketing materials, and so on. And so those when I subscribe to something, I'm always going to use that particular email address because I want to keep them in two separate rails, two separate tracks. I use that secondary email for financial transactions. Like, for example, whenever I buy anything on Amazon and Amazon sends me a confirmation notice, it goes to that email. I don't need to see it right away, right? If there is a bill due, credit card, my American Express sends me an email every month saying, hey, my statement is available now. I don't need to see that right away. I don't need to be that attentive to that email. So that will go into my secondary email. And I check this email address really only every couple of days, scanning through it, making sure that, hey, is there something that I really want to see here or not see here, etc. A little bit of an advanced tip is that I use this program called Postbox, and it's available for the Mac or the PC. And the thing about Gmail is Gmail doesn't really allow you to sort by sender. So if you want to see and sort everybody by their sender, and say you have say 200 emails, or maybe in the secondary email I may have it builds up because I don't look at it frequently, so I may have 500, 600 emails in there, and I'll take the time to go look at it. And so in that particular email, I may use this client postbox to download the emails there, sorted by sender, so I can see everything from that particular sender, everything from the next sender, etc. And so you don't need to do that, but that's just something that I use. But primarily, what I want you to understand is a concept of two emails: a primary and a secondary email, because it's important because we're going to keep those separate. So you're only going to be able to see at all times, really, the stuff that comes into the primary, and you still have access to the secondary stuff, but it's not really front and center as you're moving about your day and going through your email.
And
so,
Chico, one thing, all of your email still comes into one Gmail box, correct?
Right. All the emails go into to one email box. Correct.
Yep. Exactly.
So
and Chico had me set up the same thing. Like I have g@garyboomershine.com. That's my main. That's private. And then I have Gary at REIVault or Gary at Sales Team Live. I've got I have a lot more email addresses, but it all filters into one that allows me to get quickly. And you'll see this as this unfolds. It really gets you to see the stuff that matters, not have a big cluttered inbox. Your inbox for the most part is going to stay, just with the handful of stuff that you need to get to quickly. Okay, keep going.
So the way I start is I start with my inbox pretty much looking like this, right? So let's say I log in the morning to look at my inbox, and let me expand this. I think if I expand this,
that's good.
Okay. So if you notice here, I have all these. I want you to notice on the left-hand side where it has the button called Compose. Those are some of the labels. And then if you notice here, I have all the emails that have come in, and they are, there's some color coding you'll notice on these emails, and some things that don't have any sort of color coding on them. And so I'm going to go through this. The one thing I want to point out here, which I don't have a slide for, if you look at on the left-hand side, Compose, there's certain labels that I have 00 and 01. Those are the labels that I want to show up at the top. And so if you notice here, there's an email address that I have called chris@chrischico.com. That is my secondary email. That email address I use for Amazon payments, for my bills, for credit card statements and everything else. And it's filtered, so I don't see it right away. It doesn't come into my main inbox. It goes into that label, and then I can always look at that label later. Okay. Now, so this is in essence how my inbox starts. So what I want to do is I want to walk you through how I process my email in the morning. So what I've done is and I could provide this search for you. Whenever you are, Google has a very robust search. So if you notice, if you look at the emails that I have here, some of them have labels, some of them don't have labels. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use categories, make sure that all emails always fall into a category. But but the inbox, just because of the nature of it, not all emails that come to me have a label. So I'm always looking to identify emails that don't have a label. So either I can say, you know what, I don't need to see this stuff because it doesn't fall into any of the categories. Maybe I need to unsubscribe, or maybe I need to push it to my secondary email. Or I may want to say, you know what, this is an email I'm going to get frequently. Let me put it into one of my buckets, one of my categories with respect to labels. So one of the things that I do is I always search for a particular search in my inbox. And this is the search that I'm always doing. And the way Gmail works, most people are used to email where you read an email and then you delete it. All right. And so if you're used to Outlook or any of these services, you just delete your email. However, in Gmail, it's not necessary to do that because you have a lot of space, and you want to be able to utilize the search capabilities of Gmail so you can go back and search for your email. So there's no really reason to delete your email. However, though, what Gmail has is a concept of your inbox, meaning those are the new emails, and then your archive. Your archive is anything that you've looked at and you remove the inbox label. So you have to think of it in terms of your inbox, the stuff that's new. It's by default a label called inbox. And so I have a search that I perform called labeled:*inbox. And if you notice here, it says has no user labels, meaning I want to know all the emails in my inbox right now that don't have a label. And the reason I want to know those is because I'm always looking to see, should that email even be in my inbox, so I need to unsubscribe, So in essence, I don't want that many emails coming into my inbox that don't have a label, because it doesn't fall into one of my categories. So what I've done is, that's the search. But if you use Google Chrome or even Firefox, you can Gmail generates a URL up at the top of your web browser window. So I save this in my bookmarks. If you notice here where it says inbox, no labels, I save that as a search. So I can just click on that on my bookmark, and it keeps me in my inbox, but shows me all the emails that don't have a label. And then, so I'm always thinking about, hey, should these emails, should I even be subscribed to these emails, or should these go to another to my secondary? So an example, if you notice, there's a guy named Chris Russo, investor. So I use another email address, for example. So I subscribe to a lot of the wholesalers here in my local area, because I want to know what the properties are that they're getting, and just kind of look at things. However, it's a little bit overwhelming because there's a lot of emails. And so one of the things that I've done is I have a particular email address that I use, that I created, that is only for those particular emails from wholesalers and other real estate investors pitching their properties. So this guy, Chris Russo, investor, I gotta put that into that bucket, because then that goes into a separate label that I don't look at all the time. I just look at every once in a while. Typically, whenever I have a property for sale, I'll look through and see, hey, maybe see what other properties in the same zip code have come up, etc. So then now, if once I go through these emails, so let's say on a typical day, I go through, identify which ones don't have a label, and kind of get rid of them, remove myself, whatever I want to do with those. And then I'm left over with only emails that have a label on them. So if you notice here, I color code the labels, and I try to fit them into buckets. So if you notice here, I have maybe a few main buckets. I have reminders, notifications, teamwork, which is our project management app, and then I have people, right? And so then now what I do is I click on one of these emails. So let's say I selected one of the emails that said notification. And when I do that, I click on the notification label here.
So Chico,
yeah.
just as a note, go back. So you've color coded so that you know that typically you want to go and work all the purple ones. Or if it's, we might have VIP, the stuff that's super important, like you and I have each other on that, and a few of our managers on the team. So we'll have that color coded. So you're really looking at a color and saying, okay, I'm going to start with the purple first, right? Or I'm going to start with the yellow first. And it just allows you to get to all of those really, really fast. So you can go through, and plus it's just organizationally, you may have 10 of the same color. Most of them have to do with the same kind of thread and discussion. So you're able to go through those in 5 to 15 seconds and process all those emails, and then go to the next color. Is that pretty much accurate?
Like, for example, in this example, teamwork is where project management tool, and so I typically go to those first, because it's projects that we're actively working, and so I want to get to that right away, right? Whereas the purple one, the notifications, is more like at the tail end of things, right? Sometimes I work backwards. So if I might have a bunch of stuff and notifications, and I quickly notice that, okay, I can get rid of them, I may just go ahead and get rid of them really quickly, the way I'm going to show you now. So it just depends. So here, for example, you could click on the label. So I've opened up this email. This is an email that we get whenever campaigns are sent out internally. And so I click on the email there. I click on the label there. And then when I click on the label, what happens is, if you notice, the Google search bar has that label as a search. So anytime if you have a label and you want to know everything that's in that label, you can actually type that in. You can type in label : notifications, and now I see everything that's there. Now, if you notice, on the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 emails have the inbox label. That means that those are new emails, and then the rest of them are archived. I haven't deleted them, but they've been archived, meaning they've been removed from the inbox. Now, what I do is I add an additional search here called label : inbox. Now, once you do this a couple of times, Google will automatically remember it. So it saves it under their saved searches for Gmail. And now all of a sudden, I have only the emails that are labeled notifications that are in my inbox, and I can look at those really quickly, know what they are. In my case, I kind of know what these are, and then I could just go ahead and remove them rather quickly. And so for me, what I do is I click on the archive button, and what that does, it automatically removes them from my inbox, and then now I can go back and go back to the emails that are left. And so I'll do that with each and every one of them, right? So in other words, I'll go back to the label called teamwork, and I'll only look at those. But now I'll look at those individually, and as I go through them, then I'll process them and eventually removing them from the inbox. But what I'm trying to do is because what happens is if you're trying to go through these emails one by one, there's a lot of context switching. So you have to say, okay, this is an email from my wife, right, Roz, the one that says people toward the end. Now I got a couple emails from Teamwork, which is project management. Then I got an email from Kevin, who's a friend of mine, and he's under people. Now I got to switch back to, oh, these are notifications. So you're constantly switching back context in terms of what you're looking at. And so the reason I do this is because I want to look at all notification emails together. I want to look at all reminder emails together. I want to look at all people email together, all teamwork together. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to stay focused on that particular context that I'm looking at, and allows me to process them that much faster.
All right,
now,
Chris, hold on.
Yeah.
All right. So the process again to get all of the stuff together, you want to look at all the notifications as an example. You click in that inbox, you click the label, any one of them, right? So you click the label, you're going to click it again, right?
Right.
Google automatically will...
Well, you click on the email. You click on the email, and the email will open up.
Then you click on the label.
Right.
Which is where, okay. Google automatically types in the search bar label, colon, and then whatever that label is, which is notifications. And then Chris will start typing label, and Google will automatically fill that in. So you type LAB, and it'll automatically fill in the rest of it for you. So it's literally just a couple of clicks of a button. And so now Chris has just the notifications, the label that are notifications that are in his inbox. And then now he's looking at 5 or 6 grouped all together. And so now he can just focus on looking at those. Is there anything that he wants? He can go through them one at a time if he wants, or he can basically archive them and have them done with, because there's no more reason. He sees, oh, I've sent out some email today. I've got a Evernote reminder, and I'm done. So I just took, in literally 10 seconds, you're able to get rid of, a whole bunch of emails. And again, many of us, when you got 100 emails or 50 emails in your inbox, and you go through, they're so disjointed that you're working on the first one, it's from your wife, and then the next one, it's a real estate deal, and it's really easy to, spend 15 minutes and you only get through 1 or 2 emails. This is a way to process, to get to the fruit really fast. And this is like really step 1.
All right, and so then now, what happens now? If you notice, just on this email, on the left-hand side, you notice that there's a little star. It's not, for those of you, some of you are familiar with Gmail, some of you are not, but that's it. So what I end up doing is I end up going through all my emails, right? And as you go through emails, some of the emails, as you process, you'll be able to get rid of them right away. Others are going to require more attention. In other words, you might say, you know what, I'd like to respond to this email, but this email requires me to maybe spend a good 10 minutes just sitting down and crafting a response. So what I'll do as I go through the inbox, I will star the emails that really I have to come back to and really spend a lot more time on. And so those are the ones that I will star. And when I star them, then in this example, let's say I went through my inbox, got rid of all the junk, and then I'm now only dealing with the ones in Teamwork, and these were in our project management software. And so these were emails that that are going to require more of a me spending time analyzing things, looking and giving comments, etc. So now I star them, and I star them just so that they appear at the top. And I know that those are emails that are important that I need to work on. And what it'll do is, and I'll show you how to set this up, is that any new emails will actually appear below that. So it can always kind of keep 2 different sections, the things that are new and the things that are starred, meaning they're important and I want to come back to them.
So the star being that little, right? If you're looking at his screen that says starred,
yeah.
it's basically a favorite. So you're basically
Yeah.
marking as a favorite. You're just marking the ones that you're going to need a little bit of time. So you process all of your emails really fast. You don't respond to any of them. You actually try to process all the stuff in your inbox. If it's going to take more than 2 seconds, you want to click a star or mark it as a favorite and continue to process your emails. So you can process all of your emails, get your inbox pretty much to nothing, and then you immediately go back to the stuff that's starred. And it'll cut 90% of the effort on processing emails, at least 90%.
All right, so then now I'm going to walk you through now how do we set up all these different filters. All right, so I have a particular way of setting these up. So the way I set up these filters, and I'm going to show you how, but the way you set up these filters, if you notice, actually, I actually have these slides. So if you go into your filter settings, if you go into the Gmail settings, right, and you know what I didn't do, Gary, is I don't have a slide showing the filter. Hold on, let me go back here. So I want you to look at. Sorry about that, guys. So look at the screen. I want you to look at the right side of the screen, all the way to the upper right-hand corner where you see the little C up there on the right. And then right below that, you see a little gear icon. Sorry. So when I click on that gear icon, it brings up the settings for Gmail. And under settings, there's a section called filters. And that's what we're working off, right? So just by the gear icon, there's a section called filters. And so then that's what I'm doing here. So now when you click on the filter allows you to set up a particular filter so that as the incoming emails, as the emails come in, how do you want to handle them? What's any special actions you want? So as an example, I'm going to show you how a particular filter looks like. Because if you notice, this is on my notifications a filter. So a couple of things about these is that what I'm doing is I am including all the emails. So what I do is I go through, and as I get these emails, I will add them manually, right, to the filter. So for example, service@paypal.com, help@workflowy, support@turbobridge, max email-bounce, that's where all my faxes come in. And so I start to create a filter, right, that includes those. And when I add these email addresses, as you'll see in the next step, they have the word OR in capital, meaning that the filter looks for any of these, but they're not looking for all of them together, right? Now the other thing, if you notice about this is the same. This is a label for the label notifications, but it's actually broken up. And so what happens is that if you get to over 10 or so email addresses in a particular filter, then the filter, any subsequent email addresses that you put in there don't really work. And so what will happen is that eventually, I would put 10 in one, and then I have an overflow one. So I have two filters for notifications just because, the Gmail won't accept that many. And so the way it works is that you actually go into the filter settings, and on the left-hand side where it says from, you put in all the email addresses as I just showed you by just typing in the email address and the word or, and the email address is where that email is coming from. So as an example, if you look at some of these I have here, like reply@amazon.com, that's the from, that comes through from Amazon. And so I put those on there. When I hit continue, it takes me to this next screen that you see on the right-hand side, and that's where I have the option of applying the label. So in my case, I applied notifications. I make sure to put in the never sent to spam, because I don't want the emails to go to spam, because those are important emails. And then what that do is that will create your filter. And what you're doing is, now keep in mind is this list here shouldn't be that big, because really it's only the most essential emails. The bulk of your emails are going into your secondary email address, which you will set up a filter just like this that says, hey, any email sent to, let's say my secondary email address is chris@chrischico.com. So I set up a filter that says any email that comes to that particular address, to that email address. It doesn't matter where it comes from, but as long as it comes from to that. So in other words, in this filter here that I have, I would instead of putting in the from, I would put chris@chrischico.com in the to field. So I would say any filters that come into that, and I would create a folder. I have a label called email-chris@chrischico.com, and so all those emails go there. And so the reason I come back to that is because when you're setting up these filters, these are only, this list shouldn't be that big. This is it. This is all the ones that I have in notifications. I don't have anything else because I'm trying to make sure that that email address that I'm using is only for the most important things. So you shouldn't have this filter set up with 40 or 50 emails. If you have that, then that means that you have probably 15 or 20 that belong there, and you got 30 of them that emails that should be going to to your secondary email because there's just too many of them.
Right, Chris, go back one slide.
This one here?
Right.
No,
no, that's perfect. So one of the other things that happens, you may cover this in a few minutes, but one of the other things, you get a lot of info marketers. So info marketers and different people are constantly adding me and probably adding a lot of us to their email list, and it's super annoying, right? All of a sudden, you get over a month, you get like 30 emails. So there's also a button at the top. If you look at the screen on the pop-up on the right, there's also an option to click skip the inbox. So it doesn't actually even come in there. You can label it, like I have a label called info marketers. And then if you scroll a little further down, there's a little button right to the right of the cancel where it says update this filter or cancel. You can say also apply filter to matching conversations. So let's say you've got 100, you're trying to clear out your inbox and you've got 100 of these info marketers. You can have it skip the inbox, label it however you want, and then click the also apply filter to matching conversations, and it'll go and it'll clean all of those out, and it'll skip the inbox forever. So I find that I'm doing that a lot as I'm processing. I'm constantly trying to get people, the clutter of people that are trying to buy my time and sell me crap, and I'm moving those into a label that I call info marketers or whatever else you want. And this is a process, everybody. If you start using Gmail, you don't have to. It took me. When Chris and I got together, he looked at my inbox. I had 17,000 unread emails, and so the process for me to clear it up, it took me a few days to get it working. But this is definitely a process. You don't have to do it all in one swoop. I would definitely, if you feel like you're a slave to the inbox, this is a really great process. It does work, and it'll save you tens of hours a month on nonsense tasks.
So then now there's in addition to setting up the filters, right? So we just went over like the process of setting up the 2 email addresses, and then on the primary address, setting up the right filter or so you can put emails in the right buckets, so that when you process, you're processing the same type of emails together, and you're trying to get through your inbox as quickly as possible. So a few other settings inside of Gmail. So when you go to settings, so if so this is, let me look at here. Okay. So this section that we just went over, although if you notice here, I have settings and inbox, but if you go through the top where it says general, labels, inbox, accounts, filters and blocked addresses, that's where we just set all this up. I didn't include this slide. I should have included a slide like this, but that's what we just went through. So now, if you go to the settings, the little gear icon up at the upper right-hand corner, and you click on inbox, you remember how I showed you guys my inbox, and I had the starred up at the top, and then the rest of the emails below that? So that's where I set that up. I put starred first. Now, by default, when you open up a Gmail account, Gmail has what they call a priority inbox. So what they do is they attempt to sort all the emails out for you. And then what they'll do is they'll identify promotion emails, and then they'll identify regular emails, and they'll try to put them into the right buckets. I personally don't like that because I've had the instance where when I first tried it, many emails were incorrectly flagged. And so I'd rather just be in more control. And so by being attentive to what emails are coming in to begin with and what I subscribe to, then I don't really have that issue. So I set this up as starred first, so I can always have my starred emails always show up at the top. The other setting that I have is another setting is Gmail Labs. And so, and I'll give you guys this presentation, but these are the email labs that I have set up. So one email a lab is auto advance. So whenever I archive an email, it automatically takes me to the next email coming up, right? So if I archive an email, by default, Gmail will bring you back into the main inbox. But if I'm processing rather quickly, I just want to go to the next email and the next email after that, etc. Canned response comes in handy. So if you have particular responses that you give to people more frequently, you can actually enable that and type in canned responses, so that instead of you having to retype the same thing over and over again, you can select from a drop-down box and be able to reply to emails with a particular verbiage that you may have. I also set up the Google Calendar gadget. There's a Google Voice Player. You can play around with these. The one that I have here, also mark as red button, is enabled as well. The most important one out of these, I would say, would be the auto advance. These are the other ones that I have, but you may look at them and say, "Nah, I'm okay. I don't need that," or whatever the case is. But the auto advance is, to me, the most important one. Now, in addition to that, if we go back to the general tab, now this is in the general tab. There's a couple other settings that I have, right? And so images, I always display external images. Auto advance is set up to go to the next conversation. My default behavior is always reply all. So sometimes you get somebody that carbon copies you and then carbon copies somebody else when you're having this conversation. It's very easy to reply, and you just reply to one person, but everybody else gets taken out of the reply. So just by default, I just reply all. Conversation view. So Gmail, if you're not used to Gmail as a client, what Gmail does is it groups conversations together. So as long as the subject line is the same, then what it'll do is it'll group all those conversations together so that you can see a complete thread, almost as if you were having a chat with someone, which is very helpful. So by default, that's always turned on. So I just would leave it on. There's a send and archive feature, which I'll show you what that looks like. But whenever you reply to an email, there's a button that says, hey, I want you to send the reply, but I also want you to archive the email at the same time. And then if you have auto advance on, it'll take you to the next email. So by having that send and archive, you could do 3 things with just one action, which is you reply, you send the email, you archive it, then you immediately move to the next email. Another one that's convenient sometimes is undo send, meaning that if you, whenever you send an email, it gives you a little window that says, hey, you got 10 seconds that if you decided, hey, I don't want to send this email, then you can cancel it and it'll come back to your inbox. And that way you can retract it. Maybe you send an email, you're like, oh man, I forgot to include this in the email. You can actually cancel it on the fly. The other thing is I do keep desktop notifications off. I don't get notified of any new emails on either my phone or anything for that matter. So, which I think is important because email could be very distracting. And so I would suggest you keep your notifications off entirely and have maybe 3 times a day is what I would recommend, that you would check emails, and that's it, and no more than 3 times a day. And then the other important thing is keyboard shortcuts. As you're going through and you're learning Gmail, I would encourage you to learn the keyboard shortcuts, because many times I'm processing emails and I'm not using my mouse. I'm using my entire keyboard, using keyboard shortcuts, going through all my emails and filters and everything else without having to touch my mouse. And that just adds another layer of speed in processing your emails. Now, some additional tools that I wanted to mention. A tool that I use is Boomerang. Boomerang is a great tool that gives you additional options when you're sending emails. For example, let's say I send an email to Gary, and you know what? It's an email asking him something, and I want to make sure that, hey, if he doesn't reply back, I want to be able to come back to him and say, hey, I didn't get this response from you. So I can, if you notice the window on the right-hand side, I can say, when I send that email, I can say, I want you to send this email, but if nobody responds, to this email, like say I send it to Gary, so if Gary doesn't respond, I want you to bring back that email back into my inbox 2 days later, and that way it'll trigger for me to then come back to Gary. And the benefit of this is that you don't have to keep the email in your inbox. another benefit is that you don't have to have the overhead of trying to remember that, because then if either are going to, if you didn't have this tool, you either have to keep your the email in the inbox, or you'd have to maybe set a reminder somewhere else to come back to Gary about this particular item, when in fact it just does it automatically. And even sometimes I might be working late and I want to send an email to Gary, but I'm like, yeah, I don't want to send it to him right now. Or maybe that's not a good example. Let's say I'm sending emails and I want to send an email to Joe, but it's 11 o'clock at night, but I don't want Joe to see my email at 11 o'clock at night. I want him to see it tomorrow at 10 o'clock when he gets into his office. So I can say, I can click on the button that says, I want you to send this email tomorrow at 9:35 a.m. And then I'll hit the send button, and then he'll automatically get that email in the future. Now,
Boomerang is awesome. It's a Google. If you're using Chrome or Gmail, you can actually get Boomerang as an extension for free. And then there's also a paid version. That's really awesome. It takes you probably about 2 minutes to download it. And we would really, most of you are probably using Chrome. At some point, we'll show you some of the other things that we're doing with Chrome on a lot of this. But you just go and you add the extension called Boomerang, add it to Chrome, add it to Gmail, and then it automatically adds what you're looking at the screen. It'll make it so that you got a little checkbox, and it's great. Sometimes, like sometimes I don't like to send emails to the staff on the weekend. It's just so I'll actually put a Boomerang to send something, first thing on Monday morning. So, Debbie doesn't get an email, on Sunday when she's hanging out with the family feeling like I'm hammering her. So I do that a lot.
And then the other thing, the blue button, so the bottom portion of the screen, send later is the Boomerang. The blue button there is, if I just go back to this section here, if you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th box down where it says send and archive, that is that blue button that shows up there. So once I send that email, I can click on send and archive. What it does is it sends the email, moves the email away from the inbox, and then automatically would then take and move me to the next email in the queue. The other thing is if you didn't want to, let's say that you are on a ton of different lists and you just said, you know what, Chico, I just want to remove myself from everybody's list and just start from scratch. You can use this service. What it does is it goes through your inbox. It looks for all these emails that have an unsubscribe link, and it'll give you the option of unsubscribing to everything in one shot. So it's called unroll.me. So if you wanted that option, if you're really inundated, you just want to kind of do as many things as you can to get rid of everything, then you can use that particular tool. I've not used it because I keep everything nice and tidy. But if you're starting from a position where you're overwhelmed, if you want to get rid of email subscriptions, you can use that as well. Another thing that Gary, I don't know if you were using this before you and I started to work together, but this to me is a very, very valuable tool, which is REIVault. So, if as you're logging into websites and you're going through the intranet and you have all these different passwords, where do you keep your passwords? If you keep them in the browser, it's not really the safest place because all these browsers give the option of saving the passwords. But if your computer crashes or something happens, then you potentially might lose all of your passwords. So REIVault is a software tool that allows you to save all your passwords in one particular application. It gives you access to those passwords both on your computer and also your cell phone. So you has an app that you can access your password, saves everything in the cloud, encrypted. What that does, it enables you to, as you navigate through the web and you're logging into a particular website, it could be your banking website, you don't have to manually type in the keyword, the passwords. You can just go ahead and simply just simply click on a button. It'll show you, hey, for Chase, like Chase.com, I have like 5 logins depending on the company, the business account, etc. And it'll show all of them, and I just pick, okay, log me in on this one, and it'll just automatically input everything and log me in.
Yeah,
so it's really
REIVault is a lifesaver. You definitely, if you don't remember this, Chris, but you were giving me a really bad time because I had the same login, the same stupid. Most people have their dog, right? And they add a number 1 or a number 2, to the front and the back of it. So what's nice about REIVault is you have one master password that is the one that you should really be using. That's more complicated and safe. And then RoboForm will automatically generate a password, a very complex password, but it's a one click. You just literally pick where you want to log into, and RoboForm will go out to that website. It'll enter in the username, it'll enter in the password, and click run. It remembers to do that. And so you can go to whatever site you want, and it's really, really simple. So it's not just storing your passwords, it's actually getting you into this site as well. And so some people, I don't really like to have my bank account information, password, in the cloud. So I actually keep the main bank account password where I don't log in, but it'll automatically ask you as a reminder, do you want to save the password? You can put credit card information. It's really awesome. And if you've got even like Gmail, right? They force you to change your password. If you forget your password, they force you to create a new one. And then it just becomes this nightmare of having to write stuff down. RoboForm is awesome. It's also, you can be anywhere. You can go to any computer that you have or a cell phone and get access to your passwords. It syncs them all up automatically. And I think it's like $20 a year. It's a really, really good. If you have more than 4 or 5 sites that you're logging into, get password. It's a lifesaver.
All right. Now the next thing is I'll show you kind of a little bit of a hack that I've done with email in order to kind of delegate. Because sometimes, like if we have a project management tool, and sometimes, however, though, you may have just a simple task that you want somebody to do for you. If you have somebody working for you, or maybe you're communicating with somebody, and I do this with Roz, also my wife, is how do you do that effectively? By email, because then there's too much overhead and you trying to log into a task manager and putting in a simple task. And so the way I've done this is that what I do is any email that I send to, let's say that if I send something to Gary and I need Gary to review something, let's say hypothetically, or I need something from Gary, I'll send him an email, and the email will have a particular syntax to it in the subject line. It'll say the word action in capital letters. It'll say his name, and then I'll have a description. So I'm always really mindful of having very descriptive subject lines. And then if there is a due date, I'll put that in parentheses. And so when he receives that email, he knows, even though he might have a bunch of emails from me, he'll see that there's a few emails that say action, which means that, hey, Chico needs something. Let me see what that is. And so, for example, there's an example of a subject line, action-Gary, because also the reason I put his name, let's suppose, for example, that I sent an email to Gary, but now I also want Debbie to see it. And that has the word action. But I don't want them to look at that and say, well, who's supposed to do that? So I might send an email to Debbie and say, action, Debbie, could you review the stock and approve? And I might CC Gary, but Gary looks at that email and knows from the subject line that it's not really for him to do, it's for Debbie, but it might be something that that I also wanted him to look at in case he might have something to mention about it. And I'll put the due date, right? So that way, now what I do now, the next step with this is I actually set up a filter. And I set up a filter that takes these emails and automatically puts them in a label that I check 2 to 3 times a week, trying to just make sure that there are no loose ends, right? So if I send Gary an email with a particular thing that I need from him, however, though, how do I keep that in mind in effect for me to remember to come back to it? I could use Boomerang. That's one option. But sometimes if I'm doing it in rapid fire format, I may not use Boomerang. And so by default, I set up a filter that automatically puts that label, that puts that email in a particular label. And I also use this filter for question. For example, instead of action, sometimes I might say question in capital letters, which means, hey, it's not an action item, but it's a question that I need an answer to. And so what we do is that whoever I send the email to, I'm always looking for a reverse feedback from them, meaning that if I send an email to Debbie with that, then or she sends me an email with the word action in that way, then I know that she's expecting a reply from me to the affirmative as to whatever she needs from me. So it's always kind of like that the understanding that, hey, if I get an email like that, I'm going to reply to it because I know you need something from me. And then I do this with everybody. I do this with my wife also. I send her a couple emails today with the word action, and she knows that, hey, I need something. I need her help with something, right? So the way I do that is I set up an email. So I set up an email where it's from my main email address, whatever the email address that you're using. and where on the subject line where it has the words action or question on the subject line. And then we want to apply the label. If you notice on the right-hand side, apply the label that I created. I put 00 dash, so that way it appears all the way at the top. And it shows up as delegated dash review, which means it's either, and sometimes I might manually put in an email into that label that I want to come back to, maybe in a couple of days. But generally, it's just those are emails that I've sent that had the word action on it, that I was looking for somebody to help me with something, and I'm looking to come back to that label, look at it, and make sure that, hey, did I get what I needed from that person? And I also always mark it to never send it to spam. And we use this a lot, I think, you and I, right, Gary?
Yeah, and you know what I was just thinking, Chico, would be really awesome, and I'd love some feedback if you want. Type in the chat here if you think that this is something you want. But you know, it'd be really great, Chico, is we set up a new Podio app, right, for delegation, and we could set it up where if you send this email, it actually creates a task in Podio for them too. So, because one of the things I do is when I send this, I don't just send the email. I actually, for the team, I actually send it, and it goes into the project management tool. So they get an email, and they'll get the action email, but it'll also automatically generate a task for that person, like for Pushkar, for Debbie, or for Donna, Ryan, etc. So I'll push it out to them, but they're forced to see it. And then I'm not expecting or having to go back to email, right, to see if they've closed it out. I want a task that they actually will close out saying I've completed this, and so I don't have to go back and forth. And when they close off a task, I automatically get an email back saying it was closed. So if people would like that for their own team, we could actually put that into having something like that built for all of us. That's huge, especially when you have people, you know, that you're trying to get work done, and it's a nightmare having to, manage and follow up and ask if they're done. So this is a really good first step. Even a better, a second step would be to be able to create a task in Podio or a project management tool. And we could do that as something that comes out in a month or so, or 3 weeks or so.
Now, the other thing is a few final tips. When you're going through email, through Gmail, there's a couple of views. They have a split view, a vertical split, and a horizontal, and then a no split. I tend to just like the standard view, which is you see the inbox, and when you click inside of an email, then the whole entire email takes up the browser window. I deal with it, and then I go to the next one. You can play around with it. You might find that one might help you. You might find one easier than the other. Maybe you're moving from a different email system to Gmail, and so maybe you want to duplicate kind of the way emails looked in that old system. It's really up to you. What I've just shown you doesn't really change. It's just a different way of looking at the email. Now, a couple of things is that you always think about Gmail as Gmail has great search capabilities. And so sometimes, for example, Gary might send me an email, and he sends me an email, and I want to kind of save it for me to reference it. But he sent me an email with a subject line that was really kind of foggy. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually rewrite the subject line and send an email to myself with particular keywords, right? So he might send me, whatever the keywords are, and that way I can always go back to my email and search for it. It's a bit of a hack that I do. You can also, if you use Evernote, you can also send emails or save emails to your Evernote account. I'm not going to get into the whole Evernote conversation here because that could be another call completely. Or you can use Boomerang to have that email come back. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. The one thing, here's kind of a bit of a thing that I really dislike, and I'm always doing this, is descriptive subject lines. So I have particular people that have sent me dozens of emails, and the subject line is always the same. Like they might have sent me 12 emails over the period of the last 45 days, and the subject line is always the same, question, right? They just use the word question, and that's the only subject line that they use. And so it's very difficult because now all of a sudden, if I'm looking and trying to figure out an email from someone, all I see, if I search in Gmail, from Joe Smith, all I see is a bunch of emails with the word subject as a descriptor. Now I have to go through each and every one of those emails, look inside in order to figure out what they were. It's not really time efficient. So I always tend to use subject lines that are very descriptive, even to the point of being long, right? So that way, when somebody looks at that email, it's very clear what that email is about. So I'm very meticulous about that. And one of the things that I always do is also if Gary and I are having a conversation and we're talking about subject A, and let's say about 2 or 3 emails down in the back and forth, he now switches to conversation B, I will then edit the subject line in the email before my reply, because now that takes it and puts it into a different thread and allows me to have so then now that conversation is kind of separate from the first one we get started. So what happens is many times you might have a back and forth with somebody. You'll go from topic A to topic B to topic C. And then when you go back trying to find that email, it's buried, whatever the information is you're looking for, it's buried inside one email thread that is, 30 emails long, but you never change the subject line. So you gotta have to hunt and peck. So I'm very mindful of, if I'm going to send an email to Gary, and sometimes it's to a fault, but if I have 3 things I want to discuss with Gary, if they're not really that related to each other, I will send them 3 separate emails with 3 different subject lines, because I want to keep them separate, and it's easier for me to manage that and have those emails get lost. Because also too, if we're going back in one thread and we start introducing different subjects, he could miss something, I could miss something. So I'm always very mindful of subject lines, because again, it's easier to find something. One of the things also with regards to Gmail that I do, and I think I mentioned this before, is just I will send myself sometimes files, or send myself sometimes information or emails. I'll change the subject line, put particular keywords in there, almost as if I was putting tags, and in that way I can go ahead and look for those things later. But again, I'm very just picky about subject lines. So you might send me an email and it says question, but it's I'll come back and I'll reply to you, but I'll change the entire subject line so that it matches really the conversation we're having. And I just think it's really an effective way to handle that part of it. Now, one of the things that I do is this is just for me. I'm always sending emails to myself. If I want to remind myself about something, I typically will send myself an email, and that happens typically when I'm on the road. So you could do that a couple ways, right? And so what happens is a couple things. If I send an email to myself, I have a label called 01-action. So that way I can always go into my inbox and I can sort out all the emails that I've sent to myself, right? So that way I get those all too. So that's an additional filter that I may not have shown you guys. And then there's different apps. Like I use this app. I have an Android device. It's called Email to Self. And what I do is it's on my front page of my phone, and it already has my main Gmail address programmed. And so what I do is I click on that button, a screen pops up. I can either voice or quickly type in a message, click send, and it automatically goes into my Gmail, sends myself an email with that subject line, everything in there. And then that way, when I come back to my email, then I will sort it out. And the reason I do that is because no matter what's happening, I always go back to my email as a way of processing information. So everything kind of goes through there. So that's what I do. So if you're using an Android device, you can Google on Google Play, you can search for Email to Self. I don't know I don't know if you're using an app like this, Gary, but I'm not sure if there's a particular app available for iPhone devices that would solve that. Unless you just type in that search Email to Self. The other thing you could do is if you're using Google Now, right, on your phone, on your Android device or your iPhone, if you say to Google Now, Note to Self, then it will automatically, by default, open up the email client. And so I could say, Note to Self, remember to take out the trash when you get home. And then I'll pause, and then Google Now will automatically take that and send me an email. All in the background, it does it just by voice. So Google Now also has the option of doing that. And additional keyboard tips. I use a keyboard. The main things I use, really the letter E is the archive. So if you're looking at an email, you hit the letter E, it automatically archives it, and then we'll go ahead and take you to the next one. If I hit the letter R, I'll reply, I'll hit the send button, and I'll hit E for archive, and just automatically go through the emails without having to take my hands off the keyboard. There's a lot of a big list of stuff that's available in terms of how to learn the keyboard shortcuts. I'll show you a tool here that you can use. Don't delete emails. I generally don't delete any emails. I just simply archive them so I can have the ability to search for them later on. They get removed from my view of the inbox, but I still have access to them later on. If you want to learn the keyboard shortcuts, there's an extension for Chrome called Key Rocket for Gmail. And so what I'll do is kind of be like a little bit on the fly tutorial. So as you're doing things and clicking with the mouse, it'll say, hey, by the way, if you do this with the keyboard, then you can learn that particular keyboard shortcut. And so I try to stay on the keyboard as much as I can when I'm processing emails. And that is it. So that takes us all the way to 4:06. That took a little bit longer than I thought, Gary.
No problem.
So if you have any questions or
yeah, if you have questions, I think the easiest way right now, I know we're kind of up against the hour, a little over. If you've got some quick questions that you have on this topic, easiest way is just to write your question, and we can talk about it. If you've got a question that regarding real estate, a deal, something that you were hoping to cover on today's call, we're not going to be able to have time to do it today, so why don't you just email that question to dealhelp@reivault.com, and we'll make sure we get those answered. There will be a video replay, so we will take this this recording today, as we normally do. It will be available within the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll also take... What's that?
The way I set it up, Gary, is that as soon as this is over, a recording will automatically be generated, and for those of you that registered right now, you're going to get an email within the hour with the actual link for the replay, and then we will of course post that link in the members area. When you get the link, it's a private link, meaning that although it is a YouTube link, it's not available to anyone, so people can't look for it or search for it on YouTube. It's only available to you guys, but it is set up so that they automatically, whoever's registered here on the call today is automatically going to get an email with a replay.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll also take the slides. I'll have Chris turn the slides into a PDF. You know, there's a lot of content today, and we'll generate a PDF and attach that in the membership site along with the video, so you have that. That'll definitely be there within 24 to 48 hours. If you have questions, I'm just going to cover a couple of quick things, and then we'll get into questions. Next week, our next REIVault call, we're going to be doing it with Lou Brown, runs Street Smart Systems. Great friend of mine. He has taught thousands of real estate investors. He's primarily around creative financing, when other ways to buy property without using all cash, and possibly paying a higher price and making a lot of money. I've learned a lot from Lou. This is not a selling event. Lou's going to come in. We've got some of his members and some of his platinum guys. In fact, some people that are actually on this call today have been with Lou for a long time, buying properties using owner financing, 0% interest, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And Lou's a wealth of knowledge. So Lou's going to come in and answer questions next week, and it'll be a really good opportunity. So if you have questions around owner financing or buying properties subject to, send emails so we can start compiling those questions to dealhelp@reivault, anything that you.com, dealhelp@reivault.com. Any question that you might have for Lou, just send them in, and we're going to compile. Chris and Lou and I are actually getting on the phone later this week to prep for it. He knows a lot of people in our group buying with all cash, and sometimes losing deals to creative real estate investors that are offering higher prices creatively. And so we want to get that information and have that dialogue next week. Also, topics for the future. We're going to use this format, if you all like this format going forward, and for a variety of topics. It now compiles the ability for us doing chat. It also allows us to do screen sharing. So if we're talking about Podio, or we're showing you productivity and management tools of how to get, how to manage your team more effectively, maybe how we train our VAs, and how we're able to do it, and the type of tools, the communication tools, any calendaring tools, etc. So if you have particular topics, send an email to suggestionbox@reivault.com. And that's what we're going to be doing for at least the next couple of months, of figuring out what you all need and using it as an opportunity and bringing guest speakers in. We're going to try to maybe set the first half of a call on a topic and the second half of the call on open-ended questions that you might have. So get more value out of this and start bringing the community together, and also interviewing people in the community on deals they're doing. So with that, if you have questions, Chris, I'm just looking at the chat here.
You know what, I wouldn't mind if as we wrap this up, just because I'm not sure how this particular function works, but I think in the upper right hand corner you guys should see something that says request to speak. If one of you want to volunteer and maybe just give us a thought on whether or not this was helpful or not to you, but if you could press the request to speak button, I want to see if that shows up, and then just want to try out just how it would work if somebody were to come in and actually want to ask a question versus the chat box.
Yeah, that'll be great. Monique was asking the question, do you use the format action with vendors too? And I do, Monique. I actually use it for a bunch of the vendors that I'm closer with. And sometimes if I send that to them, I might even put a PS or a note at the bottom for the first time. But I use that a lot, an awful lot. Especially if I'm sending them an email. Sometimes I'll put a question, and sometimes for my staff I'll use acknowledge dash and then Debbie or Ryan or whomever it might be, because I want them to acknowledge. It might be a standard operating procedure or some sort of change or whatever it might be. So those are the three that I typically use, and that's been real helpful. Was this helpful, folks? Do you like the new format?
I just realized remember the 15-second delay.
Oh yeah,
delay.
That's right. I was going to say silence is acquiescence. So that means everybody loved it, Chris.
They just haven't had a chance to tell us. We're delayed. They haven't had a chance to tell us.
Is that a Google Hangout or is that Webinar Jam?
Oh, what I'm looking at?
No, the delay.
It's a Google Hangout.
Okay.
Yeah, the Google Hangout. The Webinar Jam is just kind of like a graphical interface on top of Google Hangouts. So
yeah. Zeke says this monster has been after me. I'll tell you, email almost crushed me. I was getting so many emails, especially, you're running around with your pants on fire, and Chico, you actually sent me a couple of videos because I know that you actually signed up for some courses and things on this, because email can just be daunting. And I've slayed the dragon. It's really opened up my time, especially the people that you think, I want to see these magazines or these info marketers or what they have to say. Well, just skip the inbox and put all the info marketers, skip the inbox, put them into an info marketing label, and check that maybe once a month. You'll be shocked. You'll have hundreds and hundreds of emails that have been stealing and robbing your time. And take this thing slowly. When I started this, I tried to create a handful of labels, and then I took my Gmail and I basically archived everything, and I started from scratch. And rather than going through months and months of emails and trying to create all the perfect labels, you really don't need a lot of labels. You only need a couple. Remember, a label is kind of like a directory or a folder. And instead of you having to move the stuff in there, you can use Gmail to automatically push that stuff and skip the inbox of the things that are really not necessary, and then label and color code with the labels. And what we can do is, if a few of you will ask in the next week or two if we need to kind of come back for a second review of this, maybe in real time, Chris, you know, spend 10 minutes and just kind of walk through. Maybe you and I will have our inbox and kind of walk through how we process it. People will be blown away where we can take 100 to 200 emails and process them in like 3 minutes, and then focus on the 5 or 6 emails that you really need to reply to. So awesome. Jim says he loves the format. Yep, I agree. Grace says she likes some advanced Podio techniques, and would be great. Awesome. It turns out we are we're a preferred partner with Podio, by the way. We got access, and we're actually, as part of their technical team, we're on special emails, and we found out GlobiFlow is the workflow engine behind Podio, and it turns out we're actually the largest client now for GlobiFlow. And I say that because there's a lot we can do, and we're just looking for ideas. Justin today on the team had some recommendations for some offer generators and for some lead processing. So as long as we get a better idea of what all of you need, we've got the R&D budget, and as long as we can all benefit from it, we definitely want to put stuff on the roadmap. So we're always looking for feedback and suggestions. Just email suggestion box at reivault.com, and everything that we do is based on what all of you want, and I mean everything that we've built to date, and we have a lot more capability, and we're working on a lot of new things as well. So anyway, great stuff. Chris, I think that's probably a wrap for today.
Yep, I think so.
And remember, send in emails, please, to dealhelp@reivault.com with questions that you have for Lou Brown next week, specifically on owner financing, creative financing of how to buy and sell properties a little bit more creatively. It's not a selling event. Lou, I'm sure at the very end, is going to be offering some free training. I've set up something for him where people can go. I think it's a 2 or 3 day free boot camp. He normally charges $1,000, so that will be offered. It is free. It's kind of our goal here is we have strategic partners for different things, and we want to make sure everybody has access to the best of the best. And so be on that call next week. There'll be a reminder probably on Monday. So with that, Chris, anything else?
No, that's it. So we're good.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you for attending.